"A hot dog stand by the road would suit you better, Dad," my daughter said in a fancy restaurant, smiling treacherously. I just said to the waiter, "Call the manager. I'll take a seat in the VIP room." When the restaurant owner came out, he saluted and said, "It's an honor for me, sir." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The August morning air still held that perfect 72-degree temperature that made La Jolla feel like some kind of conspiracy against the rest of the country. My shoes hit the pavement in rhythm, 6 miles done, sweat cooling on my neck as I rounded the corner to my house. The Spanish Colonial I'd bought 23 years ago with my discharge bonus looked the same as always. Cream stucco, terracotta roof, bougainvillea climbing the front wall in violent purple clusters. Then, I saw Trevor's Tesla in my driveway. Beside it, a silver Lexus I recognized as belonging to his parents. I slowed to a walk, pulling out my earbuds. Through the front window, I could see movement in my living room, multiple people. The front door was unlocked when I tested it. Master bedroom would be perfect for us, don't you think? We could finally have that sitting area you wanted. Trevor's voice carried from inside, confident and possessive. I pushed the door open and stood in my own entryway like a stranger. 4 people sat in my living room as if they owned it. Gloria, my daughter, perched on the armrest of my leather chair. Trevor sprawled on the sofa, his parents flanking him. Coffee cups dotted my mahogany side table. Papers were spread across my coffee table. Blueprints, it looked like. Architectural drawings of my house. They didn't notice me immediately. I watched Trevor gesture broadly at the ceiling. "Update the whole kitchen. Those cabinets are what, 90s? We're talking a complete gut job." "Trevor." Gloria's voice carried a warning note. She'd seen me. 4 heads swiveled. The silence stretched exactly 2 seconds too long. "Daddy?" Gloria stood, her smile switching on like a lamp. "You're back. We were just discussing some improvements to the house. Isn't that exciting?" I stepped inside and closed the door with deliberate care. Marilyn Jordan, Trevor's mother, watched me with the kind of expression people reserve for elderly relatives who might wander into traffic. Her husband Caleb nodded once, a greeting that felt more like assessment. "Improvements?" I kept my voice level. 30 years in the military teaches you to control your tone even when your pulse is hammering. "To my house." "Our house, technically." Trevor's grin was all teeth. "Family home now, right, Colonel? Since we've been here, 8 months? 8 months. They'd moved in after Trevor's startup collapsed, and Gloria called me crying about eviction notices. Temporary, she'd said, just until they got back on their feet. I'd said yes because that's what fathers do. I walked past them to the kitchen, needing distance. In the refrigerator, I found my protein shake pushed to the back, replaced by organic juice boxes and expensive cheese I hadn't bought. Small things. Everything was small things lately. When I returned, Gloria had positioned herself directly in my path, holding papers. "Daddy, we wanted to talk to you about something important. Why don't you sit down?" The way she said it, that particular tone that suggested I was fragile, made something cold settle in my chest. I sat in my own chair, and Gloria immediately moved closer, perching on the ottoman in front of me. She held a blue folder. "You've done so much for us." Her voice dripped with honey I didn't believe. "You've carried so many burdens for so long. We think it's time we helped carry some of that weight." She opened the folder, legal documents dense with text. I caught the phrase "power of attorney" in bold at the top. "What is this?" "Just paperwork that would let us help you manage things." She produced a pen from somewhere. "Bills, legal matters, financial decisions. You deserve to relax and enjoy your retirement without all that stress." Trevor leaned forward. "At your age, Colonel, you really shouldn't be burdened with all this complexity. Remember last week when you forgot where you parked at the grocery store? These things happen. It's natural." I'd parked exactly where I always parked. He was lying. The realization hit like a cold slap. Marilyn's voice floated from the sofa, carefully concerned. "My mother signed her power of attorney at 60. Best decision she ever made. No stress, no worry about making mistakes." They'd rehearsed this. The thought crystallized with absolute certainty. This wasn't spontaneous concern. This was coordinated. Gloria held out the pen, her hand moving toward mine with gentle insistence. "We just need your signature here, and initial here." I looked at the papers without touching them, the words blurred and sharpened. Durable power of attorney, financial authority, legal representative. My watch was missing. The thought came from nowhere, but once it arrived, I couldn't dismiss it. My father's Omega, the one I'd worn for 40 years, had disappeared from my dresser 3 weeks ago. Gloria had helped me look for it, suggesting maybe I'd misplaced it. Maybe I was getting forgetful. The mail had been opened lately, not obviously, carefully steamed and resealed, but I'd noticed. Bank statements, investment letters, all arriving already opened. Trevor's jokes about nursing homes. Just wait, Colonel, another few years, and we'll have you in one of those nice places with the shuffleboard courts. Always laughing when he said it, always watching my reaction. I appreciate the concern. I heard my voice from somewhere distant and calm. I'll think about it. Gloria's smile tightened microscopically. Daddy, it's really just a formality. We're family. Don't you trust us? The question hung in the air like smoke. I met her eyes, my daughter's eyes, the same amber brown as her mother's, and saw something I'd been avoiding seeing. Calculation. Not love or concern. Calculation. I said I'll think about it. I stood up, the movement making Gloria pull back. Was there anything else? Silence. Trevor exchanged a glance with his mother. Caleb's jaw tightened. Gloria recovered first, standing and touching my arm with practiced affection. Of course. Take your time. Actually, I wanted to tell you. Tomorrow night, we're all going to the Admiral's table for dinner. A celebration. Celebrating what? Her smile was radiant and utterly empty. Our family living together, all of us under one roof. Won't that be wonderful? I made reservations for 7 o'clock. I nodded slowly. Sounds fine. They left shortly after, gathering their papers and coffee cups, Trevor's hand possessive on Gloria's back as they headed upstairs to what used to be the guest suite. Marilyn touched my shoulder as she passed. You're making the right choice, DeWitt. Family takes care of family. After they left, I went to my study and closed the door. My desk drawer was slightly open. I always closed it completely. I pulled it all the way out. The papers inside had been shuffled. My passport had been moved. The spare checkbook was at the front instead of the back. I sat in my chair and pressed my fingers against my temples. On the wall, my medals hung in a shadow box. Bronze Star, Defense Superior Service Medal, 30 years of command positions, strategic planning, leading men through situations where one wrong decision meant casualties. And here I sat in my own house, being circled by vultures wearing familiar faces. The empty space in the drawer where my father's watch should have been seemed to pulse like a wound. Tomorrow night at the Admiral's table, a celebration. I didn't believe that for a second. Dawn came the way it always did, through the east window of my bedroom, turning the ceiling from black to gray to pale gold. I woke at 0530 hours, military habit carved too deep to break. The house was silent above me. They slept late on Sundays, Gloria and Trevor. Entitled people always did. I pulled on running shorts and headed for my study instead. Morning routine, check emails, review finances, plan the day. But when I flipped the light switch and saw what waited for me, I stopped in the doorway like I'd hit a wall, papers everywhere. My filing cabinet hung open, the lock mechanism bent and twisted. Desk drawers pulled out, their contents scattered across the floor. The painting that concealed my wall safe was askew, and someone had tried the combination, failed, judging by the undamaged lock, but tried. I stood very still, my pulse steady despite the violation. This had happened while I slept. While I lay unconscious 15 feet away, someone had broken into my study and searched through my life like I was already gone. I knelt and picked up the papers one by one, my discharge documents creased and footprinted, property deed to the house, crumpled, investment statements, carefully examined and abandoned. They'd been looking for my will. My estate planning folder was completely empty, its contents taken. The file cabinet lock showed fresh scratches. They'd used a screwdriver or knife, forcing it clumsily. Arrogant enough to be obvious. Confident I wouldn't do anything about it. I gathered the documents and returned them to folders, my movements mechanical. My hands didn't shake. I'd seen worse things than betrayal. I'd seen men die badly, seen trust shattered in ways that left bodies on the ground. But those were enemies, expected. This was my daughter. This was family. The word felt foreign now, like something translated poorly from another language. At 9 o'clock, I went downstairs and started coffee. Trevor appeared first, his hair wet from the shower, wearing shorts and a Stanford t-shirt I knew cost more than most people's weekly groceries. He poured coffee without asking if I'd made it for myself. "Morning, Colonel." He leaned against my counter like he owned it. "Sleep well?" "Fine. Good, good." He sipped, watching me over the rim. "You know, I was thinking about this house last night. Houses this size in La Jolla are going for what? Close to $3 million? That's a lot of value just sitting here. Seems excessive for one person rattling around alone. The utilities alone must cost thousands every month." I cracked eggs into a pan. "I like my space." Marilyn descended next, Caleb trailing behind her like an obedient shadow. She settled at my kitchen table, as if it were hers, accepting the coffee Trevor poured for her. "DeWitt." Her voice was warm, concerned, poisonous. Caleb's cousin moved to a wonderful senior community in Del Mar, independent living, but with support when needed. Beautiful grounds, social activities, medical staff on site. At your stage of life, it's really the sensible choice. Less responsibility, more security. I plated my eggs and sat across from them. "My stage of life?" "Well, yes," she smiled gently. 64 is when most people start thinking about simplifying. My mother was just 62 when she moved, and she said it was the best decision she ever made. No more worrying about maintenance, property taxes, repairs. Trevor topped off his coffee. "Plus, think about the equity. You could sell this place, invest the money properly, live off the interest in some nice little condo, make things easier for everyone." "Easier for whom?" I kept my voice neutral, but my eyes stayed on Trevor. He shifted just slightly. Gloria appeared in the doorway, wearing a silk robe I'd bought her mother 20 years ago. My dead wife's robe. The sight of it hit harder than I expected. She crossed to the table and sat beside me, her hand touching my shoulder. "We're just thinking of your welfare, Daddy." The emphasis on "your" sounded wrong, possessive, not caring. "I'm 64, not 94. I set down my fork with precision. "I served 30 years in command positions. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own property." Silence stretched across the table. Caleb's eyes dropped to his plate. Marilyn's smile froze. Trevor's jaw tightened. "For now, maybe?" Trevor's voice had changed, lost its casual coating. "But things change fast at your age. Better to plan ahead than wait for problems to develop. You understand what I'm saying?" I understood perfectly. The threat was barely veiled now. Gloria squeezed my shoulder, her fingers pressing just slightly too hard. "Trevor's just concerned, Daddy. We all are. Tonight at dinner, we can discuss options, make plans together as a family." They finished breakfast and drifted away. Trevor back upstairs, Marilyn and Caleb to the guest room, Gloria to the kitchen to load the dishwasher with movements that suggested ownership. I sat alone at my table and watched her. When she turned and caught me staring, our eyes met. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, her mask slipped completely. The warmth vanished. What looked back at me was cold and evaluating, the expression of someone appraising an obstacle, not a father. Then she smiled again, and the warmth returned like a costume pulled back on. "Tonight's going to be lovely, Daddy. The Admiral's table is supposed to be wonderful. I'm so glad we can all spend time together." I nodded and said nothing. She left the kitchen humming something cheerful and empty. I returned to my study and closed the door, locked it this time. Then I pulled out my laptop and opened the browser. The Admiral's Table San Diego owner went into the search bar. The results loaded. I clicked the first link, the restaurant's About Us page. There he was. Luke Owens, standing in front of the restaurant in his dress whites, captain's insignia on his shoulders. He'd served under my command in Desert Storm. Smart officer, good strategic mind, always 3 moves ahead. We'd kept in touch sporadically over the years. Last I'd heard, he'd retired and gone into business. I studied his photograph. Behind him, the restaurant's interior was visible, elegant, expensive, the kind of place where celebrations happened, the kind of place where families made announcements. A slow smile crossed my face, the first genuine one in days. If they wanted to make tonight a battlefield, they'd chosen the wrong terrain. They thought they were taking me to neutral ground. They didn't know the ground was mine. I picked up my phone and found Luke's number in my contacts. My finger hovered over the call button. Outside my study window, I could hear Trevor laughing at something, Gloria's voice responding. They sounded confident, happy, certain. I pressed the call button and listened to it ring. They had no idea what was coming. The phone rang twice before Luke answered. "The Admiral's table, this is Luke Owen speaking." His voice carried the same steady confidence I remembered from Helmand Province. 15 years dissolved in an instant. "Luke, this is Colonel DeWitt West." Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Colonel West? Sir, I can't believe it's really you." His tone shifted completely from professional restaurateur to that young captain standing in the desert, gratitude carved into every word. "It's been what, 15 years? Are you in San Diego?" "I am." I kept my voice level, professional. This wasn't a social call, and he needed to understand that immediately. "I'll be dining at your establishment tonight with family. I'm hoping we might have a moment to speak before service. There's a situation you should be aware of." "Sir?" The single word carried weight. "Anything you need. What time is your reservation?" 7 o'clock. Under the name Gloria Jordan. "I'll make sure everything is ready." A pause. "Colonel, I owe you my life. Whatever this situation is, consider it handled." I ended the call and set the phone down carefully. My hands were steady, but my pulse hammered in my temples. 5 hours until dinner. 5 hours to prepare the battlefield. The safe behind my father's painting, the one they'd tried and failed to crack, held my critical documents. I pulled out the property deed, my will, investment statements, everything they'd been searching for last night while I slept. I photographed each document with my phone, then locked the originals in the leather briefcase I'd carried through 3 deployments. That case would stay with me from now on. Robert Miller's office number went straight to voicemail. Sunday afternoon, of course. I left my message in the tone that made junior officers straighten their spines. "Robert, this is DeWitt West. I need to see you Monday morning, first available appointment. It's regarding my property documents. I have reason to believe someone may attempt to forge my signature. Please call me back tonight if possible." I hung up and pulled my laptop closer. The Admiral's Table website loaded quickly. Elegant design, professional photography. I clicked through the menu, the reviews, the staff page. Then I found the section labeled Our Story. Luke's photograph filled the screen. Not in civilian clothes, but dress blues, service ribbons across his chest, captain's bars on his shoulders. The caption read, "Owner Luke Owen served with distinction in the United States Marine Corps, including deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines." 3rd Battalion. The memory hit like a physical blow. July 2010. Helmand Province. Luke's unit trapped in a valley with insurgents on 3 sides and ammunition running low. I'd been coordinating air support from base when his desperate call came through. 23 Marines pinned down, casualties mounting, extraction window closing. I'd pulled every favor, threatened every pilot, moved heaven and earth to get those helicopters in. Luke had carried 2 wounded men to the first bird himself, then covered the evacuation until the last Marine was aboard. When he'd finally climbed in, blood streaming from a shrapnel wound in his shoulder, he'd looked back at me, standing on the landing pad, and saluted. We'd never spoken about it afterward. That's not how these things worked. You did your job, saved who you could, and moved forward. But when he rotated home 6 months later, he'd found me before his flight and shook my hand for a long time without saying anything. Some debts didn't require words. I clicked to the photo gallery. There he was in desert camouflage, younger but already carrying that 1,000-yard stare we all wore. His unit around him, weapons ready, heat shimmer distorting the background. I remembered that day, remembered all those days. My study had become a war room, documents spread across the desk, laptop open, phone within reach, briefcase packed. The window showed late afternoon sun turning the bougainvillea gold. Upstairs, I could hear Trevor's voice, then Gloria's laugh. They thought tonight would be their victory. They had no concept of the terrain they'd chosen. I pulled up satellite view of the restaurant's location. La Jolla's main strip, high visibility area, expensive real estate. They wanted an audience, wanted witnesses to my humiliation, wanted to prove to the world that the old colonel couldn't handle simple social situations anymore. The strategy crystallized. They'd selected the battlefield, but they didn't know the commander held it. They'd planned a public execution, but the executioner owed me his life. They'd rehearsed their performance, but I'd already rewritten the script. My phone buzzed. Robert Miller, returning my call despite the Sunday evening hour. DeWitt, I got your message. Forgery concerns? His voice was sharp, lawyer instincts engaged. Possibly. I'll explain Monday, but I need you to verify something tonight. Pull my file and check the signature on my will, the one you have on record. I want to make sure it hasn't been altered. That's kept in our secure vault, but I'll check first thing Monday morning. Should I be worried about family members? Just be thorough. I didn't elaborate. Lawyers dealt in evidence, not speculation. I'll block out 2 hours Monday at 8. Bring any documents you want me to review. After he hung up, I sat back in my chair and looked at the medals on my wall. 30 years of service reduced to brass and ribbon, mounted in a shadow box. But those medals represented something Trevor and Gloria couldn't understand. Strategy, discipline, patience, the ability to see 3 moves ahead while your opponent was still celebrating their first. Tonight wasn't about revenge. Revenge was emotional, sloppy, satisfying, but ultimately hollow. This was about justice, about sending a clear message that I wasn't a confused old man to be manipulated, about protecting what I'd built and ensuring they understood the cost of betrayal. I checked my watch. 3 hours until dinner, time to shower and dress. As I stood, my reflection caught in the window glass. Behind me, the study with its scattered battle plans. In the glass, an old soldier preparing for one more fight. They thought they were taking me to dinner. They were walking into an ambush. I spent the remaining afternoon reviewing every angle, every contingency. When evening came, I showered and dressed in khakis and a simple navy polo shirt. Casual, comfortable, exactly what they'd expect from someone they considered out of touch. The drive to La Jolla took 20 minutes through Sunday evening traffic. I parked 2 blocks away and walked, using the time to shift into the mindset I'd worn like armor for 3 decades. By the time I reached the Admiral's table, I wasn't a worried father anymore. I was a colonel preparing to engage. The restaurant occupied a corner building with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the elegant interior, soft lighting, white tablecloths, well-dressed patrons engaged in quiet conversation. The kind of place that whispered money and status. I pushed through the entrance and immediately spotted them. Center table, main dining room, maximum visibility. Gloria wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. Emerald green with a plunging neckline that drew attention. Trevor sat beside her in a charcoal suit that screamed bespoke tailoring. Marilyn dripped with jewelry, emerald earrings matching Gloria's dress, 3 separate necklaces, rings on every finger. Even Caleb had been stuffed into a tuxedo that fit him like a borrowed costume. They'd staged this perfectly. A performance for an audience. Other diners glanced up as I crossed the room. I saw the calculation in their eyes. Older man in casual clothes approaching a formally dressed party. The contrast was deliberate, designed to make me look foolish before a word was spoken. I reached the table and stopped. 5 chairs, 5 people, no empty seat. Trevor glanced at me, then away, as if noticing me for the first time. "Oh, Colonel, you made it." Gloria's hand flew to her mouth in practiced surprise. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry." Her voice carried exactly the right volume, concerned but loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "We thought there'd be enough room. Trevor made the reservation for 5, and we just assumed." She trailed off with theatrical helplessness, her eyes wide and apologetic. Near our table, an older couple paused their conversation to watch. 2 businessmen at the adjacent table exchanged glances. "Honest mistake, Colonel." Trevor still wasn't looking at me directly. These things happen when you're not used to fine dining establishments. Marilyn leaned forward, addressing Gloria rather than me, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for discussing unfortunate situations. "Perhaps we should have chosen somewhere more accessible. A family restaurant would have been more appropriate for everyone's comfort level." Around us, conversation had dimmed. People were listening now, trying to appear like they weren't. Gloria stood, her dress shimmering in the soft light. She looked at me with an expression that might have fooled strangers, concern mixed with gentle disappointment. But I saw the calculation underneath, saw the same coldness I'd glimpsed that morning over breakfast. "Honestly, Dad," her voice rose just enough to ensure the nearby tables heard every word, "you'd be better off at a roadside hot dog stand. This place is too refined for casual tastes." Trevor's laugh came first, sharp and mean. Marilyn joined in with her practiced titter. Caleb managed a weak chuckle, his discomfort obvious but his complicity complete. Several nearby diners looked away, embarrassment coloring their faces. Not for Gloria or Trevor, but for me. The old man being dressed down by his own family in public. Some probably thought I deserved it. Others likely felt the secondhand shame that comes from witnessing humiliation. I stood quietly while they performed their prepared script, weight balanced evenly on both feet, hands relaxed at my sides, face composed. Every micro-expression controlled. They wanted emotion, anger, shame, confusion, anything they could use. I gave them nothing. Gloria's smile started to waver. She'd expected something, a reaction, an explosion, or a retreat. Instead, I watched her like I used to watch enemy positions through binoculars, assessing, calculating, waiting. Interesting perspective, I said. My voice was calm, quiet, controlled. The tone I'd used when telling young Marines they were about to walk into dangerous situations and needed to focus. I turned to catch a passing waiter, a young man in his 20s with sharp eyes and quick movements, military bearing underneath the service uniform. Probably Marines. They often went into hospitality after discharge. "Excuse me." My voice carried authority without volume. "Could you please inform the manager that Colonel West would like to speak with him? I need to arrange a table in the VIP dining room." The waiter's posture shifted fractionally, responding to the command structure he recognized even in civilian clothing. "Right away, sir." He moved toward the kitchen with purpose. Gloria's eyes followed him, confusion flickering across her features. Trevor leaned forward slightly, uncertainty replacing his earlier smugness. "Dad, what are you—" "Just making alternative arrangements." I smiled then. Not the confused old man smile they expected. The smile I'd worn when watching enemy vehicles drive directly into carefully laid ambushes. "Since there's clearly been a reservation error." Marilyn's jewelry caught the light as she shifted nervously. "DeWitt, there's no need to make a fuss. We can find you a seat at the bar." "That won't be necessary." Around us, the other diners had gone back to their meals, but the tension at our table radiated outward like heat from asphalt. Gloria tried to catch Trevor's eye, but he was watching the kitchen door where the waiter had disappeared. The seconds stretched. Somewhere in the restaurant, dishes clinked, soft jazz played from hidden speakers. A woman laughed at a distant table. Normal sounds in a normal restaurant on a normal Sunday evening. Except nothing about this evening was normal. The kitchen door swung open. The waiter emerged first, moving quickly. Behind him, in chef's whites with Owens embroidered over the breast pocket, came Luke. He was older than his website photo, gray at the temples now, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in Afghanistan. But he moved with the same confident stride I remembered. His gaze swept the dining room, found me, and locked on. Recognition flared in his eyes. Then something else. Something that made Trevor shift uncomfortably in his expensive chair. Luke crossed the dining room in 10 seconds, his attention never wavering from my face. When he reached our table, he stopped and stood at attention. Then, in front of Gloria, Trevor, Marilyn, Caleb, and every nearby diner who was now definitely watching, Luke Owens rendered a perfect military salute. "Colonel West." His voice carried across the suddenly silent section of the dining room. "It's an honor to have you in my establishment, sir." The salute held for 3 full seconds. Perfect form, hand rigid at temple, eyes locked on mine. Around us, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen sounds had stopped. Luke's voice carried across the dining room, formal and commanding. "Colonel West, sir, this is an honor. Having you dine at my establishment, please, the VIP dining room is yours. Whatever you need, sir." He lowered his hand but didn't step back. His eyes swept the table behind me, taking in Gloria's frozen expression, Trevor's confusion, the in-laws pressed back in their chairs like they wanted to disappear. Luke's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then he turned to address the entire dining room, his voice rising with emotion I recognized from 15 years ago, when he'd reported his unit was under fire and running out of ammunition. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a genuine American hero with us tonight." He gestured to me with unmistakable respect. "Colonel West commanded the extraction that saved my life, and 22 others in Helmand Province. It is a true honor to serve you, sir." The other diners were staring now, not at me, but at the table behind me. At Gloria and Trevor and the in-laws who'd spent the last 10 minutes making sure everyone heard their dismissive comments about the old man who didn't belong in refined establishments. I heard it then. The sound of liquid hitting cloth, wine spreading across fabric. I turned. Gloria's wine glass had tipped in her trembling hand. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood under a field dressing. The glass slipped from her fingers and exploded against the marble floor with a crack that made half the restaurant jump. Crystal shards scattered across expensive tile. Gloria's face had drained of all color, her makeup suddenly too dark against her pale skin. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Trevor sat rigid, his hands gripping the table edge. Marilyn clutched Caleb's arm with white knuckles. None of them moved to help clean the spill or apologize for the disturbance. They just sat there, frozen, while other diners whispered behind their hands. Luke snapped his fingers, and 2 servers appeared with cleaning supplies. He turned to me, his back deliberately to Gloria's table. "Sir, if you'll follow me to the VIP room, we can ensure your comfort and privacy." I nodded once and fell into step beside him. As we crossed the dining room, I felt every eye tracking our movement. The young waiter from earlier stood near the kitchen door, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and vindication. He'd witnessed their cruelty. Now he'd seen justice. The VIP dining room occupied an elevated section at the restaurant's rear, accessible by a short staircase. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Pacific. Sunset was still an hour away, but the light had already started to shift, turning the ocean from blue to copper. A single table sat in the center of the room, set for 6. White linens, crystal glasses, fresh flowers. The kind of setting reserved for celebrities and politicians. Luke gestured to the chair facing both the door and the ocean. "Please, sir." I sat. The position gave me clear sightlines to the entrance and windows, tactical positioning so ingrained I did it without thinking. Luke remained standing, arms crossed, studying me with the same intensity he'd shown when planning operations under fire. "Sir, if you're dining with those people after what I saw downstairs, there's a situation. How can I help?" I'd prepared this explanation in the study that afternoon. Short, factual, no emotion. My daughter and her husband moved into my home 8 months ago. Temporary arrangement while they recovered financially. I discovered them searching my study for estate documents 2 nights ago. Tonight was theater. Public humiliation to establish my incompetence. They want control of my property. Luke's face hardened. That's why there was no chair. They staged it. Every detail was staged. He shook his head slowly. They tried to humiliate a war hero who saved my entire unit. In my restaurant. His voice held the kind of cold anger that made young Marines nervous. "Sir, they won't leave this establishment without understanding exactly who you are. I'll make certain of that. I don't need revenge, Luke. I need them to know I see what they're doing. With respect, sir, they need more than that. They need consequences." He glanced toward the door. "Your party is being escorted up now. They can't leave without looking worse than they already do." I heard footsteps on the stairs. The hostess appeared first, her professional smile strained. Behind her came Gloria, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Trevor followed, his face flushed red with suppressed fury. Marilyn and Caleb brought up the rear, both looking like they wanted to be anywhere else. They filed into the room in heavy silence. The hostess distributed menus and water, then disappeared quickly, closing the door behind her. Gloria took the seat farthest from me, refusing to meet my eyes. Trevor sat beside her, hands clenched in his lap. Marilyn whispered frantically to Caleb, who just shook his head repeatedly. Luke remained standing behind my chair like a sentinel. The message was clear. This was my territory now, and he was ensuring they understood it. I waited until they'd all settled, until the silence had stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Then I spoke in the same tone I'd used for debriefings after difficult operations. Factual, clinical, unavoidable. In July 2010, Captain Owens and his unit were pinned down in a valley in Helmand Province. 3 sides blocked, ammunition running low, casualties mounting. I coordinated the extraction from base, called in every favor, moved every asset. Luke carried 2 wounded men to the first helicopter himself, then provided cover until every Marine was evacuated. 23 lives saved that day. Luke shifted behind me, but said nothing. Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it again. Gloria stared at her empty plate. That was 15 years ago, I continued. Luke still remembers, still honors that debt, still understands what duty and gratitude mean. The words hung in the air like smoke after artillery fire. Trevor finally found his voice. It came out wrong, defensive and hollow. That's ancient history, isn't it? Old war stories. We're talking about practical matters now. Estate planning, senior care, real-world issues. I looked at him for a long moment. He shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. Honor and gratitude don't age, Trevor. My voice dropped lower, colder. Unlike respect for parents, which apparently has a very short shelf life. Luke understands duty. 15 years later, he remembers. You can't remember 8 months of hospitality. Trevor's face went from red to purple. His mouth worked, but no sound emerged. Gloria tried next, her voice weak and trembling. Dad, this is all a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help. We're going to finish this meal. I cut her off with the same finality I'd used when ending pointless tactical debates. Then we're going to go home. Tomorrow, we'll discuss what happens next. Tonight, be quiet and think about your choices. Servers brought food no one wanted. Caesar salads arrived first, followed by entrees that sat largely untouched. Gloria pushed lettuce around her plate. Trevor sawed mechanically at his steak without taking a bite. The in-laws had ordered the most expensive items on the menu, old habits dying hard even in crisis, but neither touched their lobster. I ate methodically. The salmon was excellent, prepared with herbs I couldn't identify but appreciated. Every few minutes, I'd glance up to find one of them watching me with expressions that ranged from bewilderment to barely concealed rage. Luke stood behind my chair for the first 20 minutes, his presence preventing anyone from attempting conversation or early departure. Eventually, he leaned down and spoke quietly near my ear. Sir, I need to check the main dining room. Will you be all right? I'll be fine, Captain. The old rank made him straighten. He nodded once and left, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. The silence that followed was oppressive. Outside the windows, the Pacific reflected the descending sun in shades of bronze and crimson. Beautiful evening. Terrible company. Marilyn broke first. She set down her fork with trembling fingers and looked at Caleb desperately. We should go. This was clearly a mistake. We didn't know. Didn't know what? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Didn't know that the man you were trying to humiliate had a history beyond the confused old fool you'd constructed in your minds? She flinched like I'd struck her. Trevor's control finally snapped. This is ridiculous. So you know some restaurant owner who served under you decades ago. That doesn't change the facts. You're 64 years old, living alone in a house too big for one person, making questionable financial decisions. What questionable decisions? I set down my own fork and gave him my full attention. Be specific. He fumbled, clearly not expecting to be challenged on his vague accusations. The property taxes alone are excessive. The maintenance costs, insurance. It's irresponsible to maintain such a large estate at your age when simpler options exist. Options like selling and splitting the proceeds with your family? His silence was answer enough. I looked at Gloria, really looked at her, searching for some trace of the daughter I'd raised. The girl who'd cried in my arms when her mother died, who'd asked me to walk her down the aisle, who'd promised to take care of me when I got old. When did it change? I asked quietly. When did I stop being your father and become a problem to solve? Her eyes welled with fresh tears, but she didn't answer. Couldn't answer, maybe, or wouldn't, because the truth was uglier than silence. 8 months ago, I continued, you called me crying about eviction, about Trevor's business failing, about losing everything. You begged me to help. I said yes without hesitation, gave you a home, asked for nothing in return. Did I ever make you feel unwelcome? Did I ever suggest you were a burden? Gloria's shoulders shook. Trevor reached for her hand, but she pulled away. And in those 8 months, you've systematically prepared to take everything from me. Search my office, open my mail, stolen my father's watch. Yes, I know it didn't just get lost. Invited your in-laws to pressure me into signing away my autonomy. Planned tonight's public humiliation to establish that I'm incompetent. Dad! Gloria's voice broke on the word. I'm not finished. The command tone silenced her immediately. You brought me here tonight expecting to embarrass me so badly I'd be grateful for whatever scraps of dignity you left me. You thought I'd sign anything, agree to anything, just to end the humiliation. That was the plan, wasn't it? Trevor's jaw worked. Marilyn stared at her untouched lobster. Caleb looked like he might cry. But you made one critical error. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded on the table. You assumed I was weak, confused, forgettable, an old man past his usefulness. You never considered that I might have built a life worth remembering, that people might still respect me, that I might have more resources than you imagined. The sun had nearly set now, painting the room in shades of dark orange and purple. The mood lighting hadn't activated yet, leaving us in gathering shadow. Tomorrow morning, I said, I have an appointment with my attorney. We'll be reviewing my estate documents, verifying all signatures, and implementing additional security measures. My property will be protected, my autonomy will be ensured, and we will discuss your living arrangements. Gloria's head snapped up. You're kicking us out? I'm giving you a choice. I met her eyes steadily. You can acknowledge what you've done, apologize genuinely, and we can work toward rebuilding trust under new terms. Or you can continue down this path, in which case you'll need to find alternative housing. You can't just throw us out, Trevor's voice rose sharply. We have rights as tenants. You'd have to formally evict us, go through the courts, wait months. I'm aware of tenant law, Trevor. I own the property. I know exactly what my options are. I smiled without warmth. And I have 30 years of experience in strategic planning. If you want to turn this into a legal battle, I promise you're outmatched. The threat hung in the air. Trevor's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a mottled purple that matched the sunset. Luke returned then, entering quietly and assessing the situation with one sweep of his eyes. He'd brought the check, which he placed directly in front of me, not at the table's center, not near Trevor. The gesture was deliberate. On the house, sir, he said quietly. With my gratitude. Luke, sir, he met my eyes. Please, I nodded acceptance. Luke turned to the rest of the table, his expression cold and professional. The valet will bring your vehicles around. Thank you for dining with us this evening. The dismissal was clear. Marilyn stood immediately, Caleb scrambling to follow. Gloria rose more slowly, her legs visibly unsteady. Trevor remained seated a moment longer, staring at me with undisguised hatred, before finally pushing back his chair. They filed out in silence. Gloria paused at the door, turned as if to say something, then thought better of it and left. I remained in my chair, watching through the windows as darkness claimed the ocean. Luke stood beside me, hands clasped behind his back in at ease position. Sir, if you need anything at all, you have my number. Thank you, Captain. No, sir. Thank you. He paused. Permission to speak freely. Always. Your daughter doesn't deserve you. I didn't respond. The truth was too painful to acknowledge aloud. 15 minutes later, I walked to my car alone. The valet had parked it close, another small kindness from Luke. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine, watching other diners arrive for their normal Sunday dinners, unaware of the small war that had just concluded inside. Tomorrow would bring new battles, attorney meetings, difficult conversations, possibly legal actions. But tonight, I'd won something important. I'd reminded them, and myself, that I wasn't finished yet. I drove home through familiar streets, past familiar houses, toward the house I'd bought with my own money and would protect with everything I had left. They were already home when I arrived. The Tesla in the driveway, lights on upstairs. I parked in the garage and sat in the darkness for a moment, gathering strength for what came next. Tomorrow. Everything changed tomorrow. I barely slept. The house settled around me with unfamiliar sounds, footsteps above my bedroom, water running through pipes, doors closing with too much force. They were awake too, discussing strategies I could only imagine. Every creak made me wonder if someone was outside my door, considering worse options than document theft. At 5:30, I gave up on sleep and dressed in the dark. The briefcase sat beside my bed, locked and secured with the combination only I knew. Inside, property deed, will, investment statements, discharge papers, everything they'd searched for and failed to find. The drive downtown took 40 minutes through early morning traffic. San Diego's skyline caught the sunrise, all glass and steel reflecting gold. Robert Miller's office occupied the 5th floor of a building on Broadway, the kind of place where serious people handle serious business. The receptionist recognized me from when I'd updated my will 2 years ago. She smiled professionally and gestured toward the conference room without making me wait. Miller stood when I entered, his handshake firm and his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "DeWitt, I reviewed your message 3 times last night. Forgery concerns about family members?" He gestured to the chair across from him. "That's serious." I set the briefcase on the mahogany table and opened it methodically. "Everything's legitimate currently, but they have house access, and I'm sleeping 6 hours a night. Signatures can be forged well enough to cause legal delays, even if ultimately disproven." Miller spread the documents across the table like a general reviewing battlefield maps. He produced a magnifying lens from his desk drawer and examined my signature on the property deed against my driver's license, then against my will. "No forgeries yet," he confirmed. "But you're right about vulnerability. If they have key copies and safe access, they tried the safe Sunday night, failed, but they tried." His expression hardened. "Then we need immediate protective measures. First, change all locks today. House, study, safe, if possible. Second, original documents go into a bank safety deposit box. Third," he paused, studying me carefully, "do you have any documentary evidence of their intent? Proof they're planning fraud?" I thought about the security camera system I'd installed quietly last week, when the opened mail and missing watch had convinced me to prepare for worse. Video doorbell with kitchen visibility, audio pickup, smartphone connectivity. State-of-the-art surveillance they had no idea existed. "I might," I said carefully, "get it. If you have proof of conspiracy to commit fraud, that supports immediate removal from your property. Could also mean criminal charges. Elder abuse laws in California are comprehensive and serious." He wrote down 2 numbers on his business card, a locksmith and his direct cell. "Lock changes today. Call me the moment you have any evidence. And DeWitt, be careful. Desperate people make dangerous decisions." I left his office at 10:30 and drove directly to Wells Fargo on Prospect Street. The vault area was cool and quiet, rows of safety deposit boxes lining the walls like small metal coffins. I transferred everything from my briefcase into box 847, keeping only the key. The originals were now untouchable. The drive home took me through La Jolla's main streets, past shops opening for business and tourists already claiming beach parking spots. Normal Monday morning, normal city. Nothing normal about what waited at my house. I was 10 minutes from home when I remembered the security app on my phone. I pulled into a parking lot and opened it, curious if they were still home or if they'd fled after last night's disaster. The kitchen camera feed loaded immediately. All 4 of them sat around my breakfast table, Gloria pacing while Trevor gestured aggressively, Marilyn and Caleb watching like anxious spectators at a violent match. I turned up the volume. "The old man's downtown, probably crying to some lawyer." Trevor's voice was sharp and confident. "We've got maybe 2 hours before he gets back. I'll handle the study. You 2 keep watch." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Gloria stopped pacing. Her face was hard, all traces of the crying woman from last night erased by fury. "He humiliated me. Made me look like a fool in front of Luke and everyone in that restaurant. He's going to pay for that. Get every document you can find." "What if he comes back early?" Marilyn's voice trembled. "What if there's trouble? Trevor, maybe we should reconsider." "Too late for cold feet, Mother." Trevor stood, pulling a notepad toward him and sketching something. The layout of my study, I realized with cold clarity. He marked the safe location, the file cabinet, my desk. "We're committed. Either we get control of this house or we're out with nothing. And he won't do anything. He's too old and soft. Too old and soft." I activated the screen recording function and captured the next 3 minutes. Trevor detailing which documents to photograph, Gloria discussing how to forge my signature, Marilyn's weak protests ignored, Caleb's silent complicity. Every word, every gesture, every moment of their conspiracy. When the recording ended, I saved the file with hands that remained steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Miller had asked for evidence. I had 48 hours of it, but this 3-minute clip would be enough to destroy them. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed home, driving exactly the speed limit, obeying every traffic signal, no rush. They thought they had 2 hours. They had 15 minutes. The house looked peaceful from the outside. Bougainvillea still climbing the walls, morning sun warm on cream stucco. Inside, people who shared my blood were planning to erase me from my own life. I parked in the driveway instead of the garage, wanted them to hear the car, to know I'd returned, to feel that first flutter of panic. Then I gathered my phone, checked that the recording was saved in 3 separate locations, and walked to my front door with the kind of calm I'd learned carrying bodies off helicopters. The key turned silently in the lock. I eased the door open and stepped into my own foyer like an infiltrator entering enemy territory. From my study, I heard the unmistakable sound of file drawers sliding open. I moved down the hallway without sound, 30 years of tactical training guiding each footfall. The study door stood half open, afternoon light streaming through windows I'd cleaned myself last month. Inside, Trevor knelt at my safe, a screwdriver in one hand, and my private files spread across the desk like conquered territory. He didn't hear me approach, didn't sense me watching from the doorway, too focused on his crime to maintain awareness of his surroundings, the kind of mistake that got soldiers killed. I let him work for 15 seconds, memorizing the scene. File cabinet pulled open, my investment statements on the desk, my discharge papers in his hands, the safe's panel pried loose where he'd been trying to force it. Complete violation. Perfect evidence. Step away from that safe. My voice cut through his concentration like a blade. Out of my office. Now. Trevor spun, the screwdriver clattering to the floor. His face cycled through shock, fear, and then, incredibly, defiance. Colonel, I needed a pen, and I thought, this isn't what it looks like. I didn't move from the doorway, didn't raise my voice. It looks like you're attempting to access my safe and stealing documents from my file cabinet. That's exactly what it is. He straightened slowly, papers still clutched in one hand. You're overreacting. This is family business. We have a right to... Gloria! His voice rose sharply, calling for backup. Gloria, get in here! Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Gloria appeared behind me in the expensive heels she'd probably bought with money she'd taken from my wallet. She was already shouting before she saw the scene. How dare you accuse... She stopped mid-sentence, taking in Trevor surrounded by scattered files, the forced safe panel, my stance blocking the only exit. Her expression shifted from aggressive to calculating in a heartbeat. This is my house, too. She pivoted to full attack mode, voice rising to a scream. You can't order us around like soldiers. You owe me. All those years you chose the military over your family. You're obligated to take care of me. This is what you owe. I let her rage wash over me without responding. Let her escalate into hysteria, every accusation another rope to hang herself with. She'd always had a temper, even as a child, but she'd learned over the years that screaming usually made me concede just to restore peace. Not today. When she finally paused for breath, I pulled out my phone with deliberate slowness. The screen showed the kitchen camera feed, frozen on the moment Trevor had been drawing his study layout. Interesting perspective, I said quietly. Let me show you something. I pressed play. The volume was at maximum. Trevor's recorded voice filled my violated study. The old man's downtown, probably crying to some lawyer. We've got maybe 2 hours. I'll handle the study. You two keep watch. Gloria's face went white. On the phone screen, her recorded image paced my kitchen, her voice bitter and clear. He humiliated me, made me look like a fool in front of Luke. He's going to pay for that. Get every document you can find. The recording played for the full 3 minutes. Every plan, every insult, every conspiratorial detail. Trevor stood frozen, watching his own image sketch my study layout. Gloria's hands had started trembling halfway through, her aggressive stance collapsing into something that looked like nausea. When the recording ended, silence filled the study like water filling a sinking ship. 48 hours of recordings, I said into that silence. You discussing how to eliminate me from my own home, how to steal my property, how to forge documents, all documented, all saved in multiple locations, all admissible in court. Marilyn appeared in the doorway behind Gloria, Caleb visible over her shoulder. Both their faces had gone gray. Trevor? Marilyn whispered, horror making her voice thin. What have you done? This is criminal. This is... Conspiracy to commit fraud, I supplied. Attempted theft. Elder abuse, California law is quite specific about that. Financial exploitation of seniors 65 and older. That's me. By my own family. That's you. Trevor's defiance had evaporated completely. He set the papers down with shaking hands. We can explain. We didn't mean you were just planning to steal my property through forgery and fraud while calling me too old and soft to stop you. I looked at each of them in turn. Here's what happens next. You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and vacate my house. Not the house, my house. The one I bought with money I earned. If you're still here at this time tomorrow, these recordings go to the San Diego Police Department and my attorney files charges. Are we clear? You can't just, Trevor started. I absolutely can. This is California. You're not tenants with a lease. You're guests who've overstayed their welcome and committed crimes in my home. The recordings prove intent and action. My attorney reviewed the relevant statutes this morning. You have zero legal standing and substantial criminal exposure. Gloria's voice emerged small and broken, nothing like the screaming fury of moments ago. Dad, please, where will we go? That's not my concern anymore. You made your choices. Now live with them. We're family. Family doesn't ransack each other's offices. Family doesn't plan forgery and theft. Family doesn't call their father too old and soft while plotting to steal his life's work. I held up the phone. You stopped being my family when you started treating me like an obstacle to remove. Caleb spoke for the first time, his voice rough with age and shame. Marilyn, get our bags. We're leaving. Now. Trevor opened his mouth to argue, but his father's glare silenced him. The old man might have been weak and complicit, but even he recognized when the battle was lost. 24 hours, I repeated, not a minute longer. I stepped aside from the doorway, giving them exit. They filed past me like condemned prisoners leaving a courtroom. Gloria tried to catch my eye, but I looked through her. Trevor's hands were still shaking. Marilyn was crying quietly. Caleb just looked old and defeated. When they disappeared up the stairs, I stood in my ransacked study and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no regret. Just the cold certainty that I'd done what needed doing. I pulled out my phone and called the locksmith Miller had recommended. Then I called Miller himself and told him to prepare whatever paperwork would formalize their removal. Tomorrow, they'd be gone. The day after, I'd change every lock. Within a week, this house would be mine again in every sense. But tonight, I had to survive 24 hours living with people who just learned they couldn't steal my life after all. The knock came at 8:30 that evening. I sat at my desk reviewing the documents Miller had emailed, legal protections, disinheritance grounds, eviction procedures I probably wouldn't need given the recordings. The knock was soft, tentative. Gloria's knock. Come in. She entered with mascara deliberately smeared down her cheeks, wearing the vulnerable expression she'd perfected as a teenager when caught breaking curfew. She approached slowly, reaching toward my arm. I stepped back and maintaining distance. Her hand dropped. Daddy, please, I'm sorry. Her voice carried that particular tremor she saved for maximum effect. We made mistakes, but we're family. You can't just throw us out. We have nowhere to go. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. She held the performance for maybe 10 seconds before her face hardened, the mask slipping. You're going to be alone. No one will take care of you when you need it. You'll die alone in this house, and it'll be your fault for pushing away the only family you have left. I was alone before you arrived, I said quietly. I prefer it to living with people plotting to steal from me. Leave. She stared at me, searching for any crack in my resolve. Found none. Turned and left, without another word, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. 2 hours later, Trevor found me in the kitchen making tea. He slid onto a bar stool, arranging his features into what he probably thought looked reasonable and businesslike. He pulled out his phone and set it on the counter between us, apartment listings visible on the screen. Look, Colonel, let's be practical here. He spoke like we were negotiating a contract, not discussing his attempted theft. You give us $50,000, call it a loan if that helps you sleep, and we walk away clean. No drama, no lawyers, no complications. Everyone wins. That's less than 2% of what this place is worth. I poured hot water over the tea bag and watched it steep. Didn't touch his phone, didn't look at his listings. I don't negotiate with people who broke into my safe. You have until noon tomorrow. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. We could make things very difficult for you. Elder abuse claims, competency hearings. There are ways to drag this out for months, maybe years. I looked at him then. Really looked at him. I have 48 hours of recorded conspiracy to commit fraud. Try it. Your deadline stands. He grabbed his phone and left, the bar stool scraping loudly against tile. I drank my tea alone in the quiet kitchen and felt absolutely nothing but satisfaction. Tuesday morning, I woke at dawn and positioned myself in the wingback chair facing the staircase. Clear view of their bedroom door, the front entrance, and my study. I made it look casual, newspaper in lap, coffee on the side table, but the position was purely tactical. Nothing would leave this house without me seeing it. At 7:15, Caleb appeared first, carrying a heavy suitcase. He wouldn't meet my eyes as he struggled down the stairs and out to the rental minivan, now parked in my driveway. Marilyn followed with smaller bags, her face puffy from crying. Gloria emerged at 7:30 in full makeup and designer clothes, carrying an armload of shoes in their original boxes. She made 3 trips for just her wardrobe, each time shooting me looks that alternated between wounded and venomous. Trevor checked my study twice, once at 8 o'clock, once at 9:30, confirming nothing remained of his attempted theft. Each time he walked past me, his anger was palpable, radiating off him like heat from concrete. At 9:45, I heard Gloria's voice from upstairs, pitched to Carrie. "This is unbelievable. After everything we did for him, we moved here to help, and this is how he treats us." Marilyn's response was quieter, defeated. "Gloria, he has recordings. Trevor tried to break into his safe. Maybe we should just go quietly." The packing continued. Furniture they'd brought, electronics, kitchen items they had purchased. I tracked every box, every bag, every piece that left. Nothing of mine went with them. At 11:30, the locksmith's van pulled up outside. He approached the door just as Trevor loaded another box, and they nearly collided. The locksmith nodded politely and waited. Trevor's face turned purple. "You scheduled a locksmith?" His voice cracked slightly. "Before we're even gone?" "You have 17 minutes, I said from my chair. "He'll start the moment you're off the property." Trevor loaded the last box at 11:43. He herded his family into the minivan, Gloria in the passenger seat still crying theatrically. His parents crammed in back among the boxes and climbed into the driver's seat. He rolled down the window as he started the engine. "Enjoy your empty house, old man. Hope it keeps you warm." I checked my watch. "You made it with 4 minutes to spare. Drive safely." The minivan pulled away down the palm-lined street, turned the corner, and disappeared. I watched until I couldn't see it anymore, then turned to the locksmith, who was already pulling tools from his van. "All exterior doors," I confirmed. "Front, back, side entrance, and garage." "Yes, sir. Should have it done within the hour." I let him work while I walked through the house. Their rooms were stripped bare, mattress pads abandoned, hangers scattered, the particular emptiness that comes after forced departure. But my furniture remained, my books, my medals on the wall, my father's painting concealing the safe they'd tried and failed to crack. I ran my hand along the study desk, now clear of violation, tested the new lock on the front door, feeling the satisfying resistance of a fresh mechanism that no one else had keys for. By 1 o'clock, the locksmith had finished. I paid him in cash, accepted the new keys, and watched his van drive away. Then I was alone in my house, truly alone, truly mine. I made lunch, a proper lunch, taking time with it, and ate at my dining room table without anyone watching, without anyone calculating, without anyone planning my elimination. The silence was beautiful. After the locksmith left, I made fresh coffee and carried it out to the terrace. The afternoon sun warmed the flagstone beneath my feet. Below, the Pacific spread out in shades of blue and silver, endless and indifferent to human drama. I settled into the chair I'd bought 15 years ago and looked out at the horizon. No tension in my shoulders, no listening for footsteps behind me, no watching for someone rifling through my things. Just peace. My phone rang, Miller's name on the screen. "DeWitt, paperwork's filed." His voice carried professional satisfaction. "The property deed now has an official notation about the attempted fraud. Any future claims from her will trigger immediate legal scrutiny. She can't touch this house." "What about the will?" "California Probate Code, Section 259 allows disinheritance for fraud or abuse toward the decedent. Given the documented conspiracy to forge documents and steal property, It's textbook grounds. I'll have the amendment drafted by Friday. She'll receive formal notification. I looked out at the ocean, processing this final piece. My daughter, formally disinherited, not out of spite or emotion, but as a natural consequence of her actions. Justice, not revenge. Do it, I said. She made her choices. We discussed a few technical details, signed some documents electronically using my phone, and ended the call. Legal protections complete, property secured, future safeguarded. An hour later, Luke called. Colonel, actually, can I just call you DeWitt? The rank feels too formal for what I'm asking. DeWitt works fine. Good. His voice warmed. I co-own a little Italian place in Encinitas. Quiet, good food, no drama. Dinner tonight? My treat, and I mean as friends, not as repaying some old debt. I smiled at the distinction. 7 o'clock? Perfect. And DeWitt. You did the right thing. Some people don't deserve the chances they're given. After we hung up, I sat with that for a moment. Friendship offered freely. Connection based on mutual respect, not obligation or blood. Something I'd forgotten could exist. My phone buzzed with a text, Gloria's number. You'll regret this. We're consulting attorneys. You violated our rights. See you in court. I read it twice, then spoke to the empty terrace. Good luck with that. I blocked her number, deleted the text. Felt nothing but relief. Standing, I walked back inside to my study. Opened the safe using the combination she'd never learned. Inside, the surveillance system's hard drive held 48 hours of their conspiracy. I disconnected the cameras throughout the house, placed the equipment in a box for storage. Evidence preserved, but no longer needed for daily monitoring. The rooms felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the removal of their presence had lifted weight from the walls themselves. I walked through each space, living room where they'd staged their renovation discussion, kitchen where they'd plotted their theft, my bedroom where I'd lain awake, listening to them move above me. All mine again, all secure. Back on the terrace, I settled into my chair with fresh coffee and watched the afternoon light shift across the water. In 30 years of military service, I'd learned that battles came in different forms. Some involved artillery and tactics. Others involved strategy and patience and knowing when to strike. This one, I'd fought with evidence and law, and the kind of precise execution that came from decades of command. No violence, no emotional outbursts. Just systematic dismantling of their plans using the very tools they had underestimated. My clarity, my resources, my refusal to be the confused old man they'd constructed in their minds. Gloria would hate me for this, probably for the rest of her life. Trevor would tell stories about the vindictive old man who'd thrown them out over nothing. Marilyn would shake her head about family betrayal. I felt no regret about any of it. They'd had a choice at every turn. Could have lived here honorably. Could have treated me with basic respect. Could have asked for help instead of plotting theft. Every decision that led to their removal had been theirs, not mine. I'd simply refused to be a victim. The ocean caught the late afternoon sun, turning portions of it to hammered gold. Somewhere in the house, the new locks held firm. In the bank vault, my documents rested secure. In Miller's office, disinheritance papers were being drafted. In Encinitas, Luke was probably already preparing for dinner with an old commander he'd decided was worth calling friend. My phone sat silent on the table beside me, Gloria's number now blocked. No more threats, no more manipulation, no more watching my own family circle me like predators. I'd built this house with honest money earned through honest service. Had raised a daughter here, buried a wife, lived a life. Some of those chapters had ended badly, but the story wasn't finished. I wasn't finished, just recalibrated, just reclaimed, just ready for whatever came next. The coffee was good, the view was better, the silence was perfect. I sat there as the sun descended toward the horizon, master of my own house, keeper of my own peace, and finally, after 8 months of violation, completely free. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.